we currently live in, artists struggle with mental illnesses, often have their mental health problems emphasized when celebrating their work. What happens when mental illnesses are emphasized? When artists' mental illnesses are emphasized, people often ignore the other aspects that take part when the artist is working on their masterpiece. Instead, they focus on the artist's fixed mental illness. I will explain why this is disrespectful for the artist later on. Moving on to the definition of this motion. Mental illness. Mental illnesses are a group of disorders that affect your mood, brain, behavior, and many others. A lot of artists have mental illnesses. For example, Vincent van Gogh, Yayoi Kusama, and many more. What does the emphasis on mental illnesses look like? Art exhibitions, documentaries, or articles might foreground an artist's mental health struggles as a central narrative, framing their entire artistic journey around these challenges. This can result in a limited. We believe during the celebration of an artist's work, the primary emphasis should be on artistic matter, not on artist's mental health problems. I will explain why celebrating an artist's work should have nothing to do with mental illnesses, and why emphasizing on an artist's mental health illnesses adds unhealthy stereotypes associated with mental health. Second speaker, Aiden, will state why we should not mix an artist's illnesses and the masterpiece he or she has produced together. Why we should still have respect for privacy and dignity, and why we should be celebrating an artist's achievement instead of their setbacks and downfalls. Third speaker, Mira, will introduce the clashes of this debate and rebut side opposition. Firstly, celebrating an artist's work should have nothing to do with mental illnesses. When celebrating an artist's work, the primary emphasis should be on their artistic achievements, the masterpiece or design that they have made. If the primary emphasis is put on their mental illnesses, it takes away from the work of art they have made. It makes people focus on their mental illness. This could further encourage the common stereotype that artists must suffer from illnesses, have good creativity, as I will explain later. There are many other things that can be discussed when celebrating an artist's work, such as the techniques they use or what inspired them, the framing, and many more. These are overshadowed because people want to emphasize an artist's mental illnesses. Apart from this, taking the discussion away from the artwork itself is highly disrespectful to the artist. The artist will that piece of art, putting their heart and soul into it, only for people to start discussing about their fixed mental illness. Secondly, emphasizing on artists' mental illness adds unhealthy stereotypes associated with mental health. A common stereotype that artists get is the torture artist stereotype. This is a stereotypical belief that artists must suffer through their mental illnesses in order to produce good quality works. By emphasizing artist struggles with mental illnesses, this stereotype is encouraged because we are emphasizing the fact that the artist struggled and the artistic achievement at the same time. People, being people, will link them both together, creating and encouraging this stereotypical belief. This belief should not be encouraged because it romanticizes mental illness and disregards genuine talent and creativity. Mental illnesses should not be romanticized, as they are an experience that causes a lot of people to suffer. People who believe the type might not know the true effects of mental illnesses and could find themselves thinking that these people are lucky because they are creative. We on Side Proposition do not want to have a world where people think mental illnesses are a good thing and give people creativity. Thirdly, mental illnesses do not affect the quality of work that the artist makes. While in the 19th century, there was a common belief that mental illness is creativity, and that all mentally ill people were naturally creative, this has since been proved wrong. Even though it is the case that this is wrong, a lot of people these days still believe that mental illnesses has an enormous impact on creativity. In conclusion, from what I've told you today, this is why I strongly believe that Side Proposition should win this debate and the motion should stand.
I'm going to firstly rebuttal for what the opponent said, and then say my own arguments. Firstly, the opponent already is mentioning a disease at first, constantly. So does that mean if the artist don't have a disease, then it could not be called an artist? And also, your ignorance to the drawing is a disrespectfulness to the artist. So first, now move on to my setup. Firstly, since we think that artists use their mental health illness as a form of inspiration for their work. For example, Van Gogh's portrait won't be as influential if he had cut off his ear. Edvard Munch's The Scream painting is also a reflection of his own struggles with mental health and the feelings he experienced in his life. We believe that the art needs context, and the context comes from the unique living experience of the artist. The artwork exists because of the artist's mental health and not in spite of the artist's mental health, because they draw from their lives as a source of inspiration. Our goal is to, with the emphasis being placed on a mental health struggle, when the audience will get a better understanding of the artist's state of mind when creating the work. Now moving on to our arguments. My first argument is that there is a greater appreciation of the artwork. All good art pieces have a relatable human story behind them. Good art makes people feel strong emotions, such as sympathy and empathy, and this allows the audience to connect with the artwork. The audience can only get a good sense of what the intention behind the work that the artist is trying to communicate if they know your background story. Second, greater authenticity to the artwork. People create artwork that speaks on the experiences they themselves have never had. Sylvia Plath's book is striking because we know that she is referring to herself as a reader. We have put ourselves in her shoes and imagine what she must be feeling. Third, because art draws from inspiration. We need to know what inspired the artist. And in fact, the artists are oftentimes explicit about their lived experience that inspired the artwork. For example, if they experience trauma, they oftentimes will write or give interviews, etc., that represents the trauma specifically. Taylor Swift making music about her relationships. Hip-hop rappers who speak about the social inequalities of growing up in undersourced areas and how the rap is an outlet. Second, now I'm going to explain why this helps audiences. Although the artists have unique experiences, these experiences are still relatable or generalizable to other human beings. It is a human experience. There are people right now who have mental illness, who are complaining suicidal thoughts, feeling worthless, etc. It's sometimes valuable for them to be able to be connected with a piece of art based on the relation of the artist and their situations. If the artist, for example, committed suicide, then people may be encouraged to seek out more help if people can see the beautiful art can be created from sad traumatic experiences. Then it can help them feel like they should not give up. And if an artist could have faced these challenges, then they feel like they also can. Judge, you can see the artists, they usually have unique feelings. And when they have unique feelings, they change that unique feelings into a drawing. And when they are turning it into a drawing, we can see that artists struggle with a mental illness should not be emphasized when celebrating their work. Thank you.
As the second speaker's side proposition, we strongly agree with the motion. In my speech, I'll be stating my 3 main points as well as rebutting side opposition. Moving on to my rebuttals. Opposition said that when artists use their mental illness to inspire others, If you were an artist, would you want to be known for cutting off your ear and committing suicide? Artists should have a right to privacy and dignity. When you look at Starry Night, you shouldn't see a man suffering from a disease. Instead, you should be appreciating the art for what it is. Opposition also is making it sound like you have to have a mental illness in order to become a successful artist. And this is the only way you can inspire people to be great artists as well. This is wrong because this creates inaccurate stereotypes in society. Moving on to my arguments. Firstly, we should not mix an artist's illness and the masterpiece he or she has produced together. When celebrating an artist's work, the primary emphasis should be on the artistic design and creative achievements they have produced. Placing excessive emphasis on their mental health struggles may detract from the appreciation of their artistic talent and the quality of their work. As an example, when you see Starry Night, you shouldn't see a man, Van Gogh, suffering from a disease. We can think about the artist's illness separately, but we should not let the disease change or alter our view of their masterpiece. Artists don't want people to be known for something because of their illness. They want to be known for their talent and skill. Secondly, respect for privacy and dignity. Artists, like any other individuals, have a right
Why?
to privacy. Yes?
So at first you said that the artists, they want to be praised for the artisan skills. Then have you ever thought when you said about that again, it can cause the artist and his family members to have a secondary damage in their heart or mentally?
If you were an artist, you wouldn't want to be known for having a disease and being crazy, like cutting off your ear and committing suicide. So why do you think famous artists want them to be famous for something crazy they have done in the past? While some artists may choose to openly discuss their mental health challenges, others may prefer to keep these aspects of their lives private. It is important to respect their wishes and not impose a narrative that solely revolves around their mental illness, as this can be reductive and potentially stigmatizing. We should appreciate the aesthetics and creative impact of their work, but this doesn't mean that we need to invade the artist's privacy. They don't want their mental illness to foreshadow their masterpiece. We can acknowledge the artist's difficulties and struggles, develop empathy towards them. However, we should not let these thoughts to change our opinion or view towards the artwork. Emphasizing struggles could shift attention away from appreciating the artistic achievement and creative process, instead viewing the work through the lens of illness. Thirdly, we should be celebrating an artist's achievements instead of their setbacks and downfalls. As an observer, we should be celebrating all the great achievements this artist has managed to complete in his or her career, instead of emphasizing the hardships and mental illness the artist suffered from. If we put their personal background in front of their artwork, it will cause inaccurate stereotypes in society, like I have said earlier in my speech. This is bad because it creates stigma and stereotypes. Since Van Gogh is so well known, people will automatically set pre-assumptions that everyone with the same disease will have the same results, which is incorrect. In conclusion, after everything we have told you today, it is clear that the proposition should win this debate and the motion should stand.
Judge, in this speech, I will first present you with our third argument and then refute our other side's argument. So our third argument is that often mental health is seen as a taboo topic that many people in society do not speak about, and therefore those dealing with mental health crisis often suffer in silence. When we point out in celebration of really good artworks that the artists also struggle with mental illness, then it normalizes this discourse. People are shown evidence that you can still be very successful and contribute greatly to society, even if you are living with mental illness, even if you have flashbacks, and even if you are not considered normal. Challenge negative stereotypes and views about mental health. For example, some people say that this generation is too soft, but clearly mental health has always existed in more modern societies. People can explore things such as art therapy and try to cope with mental health struggles as a creative outlet for their emotions and troubles. Now moving on to my refutation. The opponent stated 3 arguments. The first argument is that an artwork has nothing to do with mental illness. However, as we have already stated in our first argument, it's actually not true. Your illness basically affects how the artwork looks to others. For example, Van Gogh in his later life, he suffered probably not mental, but he couldn't see clearly. And this means that later his art became more and more abstract. However, that became a style of art, and not say Van Gogh is not very good artist, not like that. It became a style of art, and therefore it's actually benefiting both because we get to see this wonderful art, and also the artist, because we could see like everything that they've gone through, and the artist can also be more famous because of their mental illness. So this is actually not true. The second argument is that mental health will cause a lot of people to suffer. However, although this is very vital that you do not get mental health if you don't have already. So, and I'm assuming nobody in this meeting has mental illness. I'm assuming that. So if I'm talking about something about mental illness, please don't feel offended. So basically, mental illness
we all know that it's not the best thing to happen to you, right? You want to be healthy. You don't want to have mental illness. And as I have explained in my speech, mental illness is seen as a taboo topic that many people in society do not speak about, and therefore those dealing with mental health often suffer in silence. This causes a lot of people to suffer, and you already stated that it caused people to suffer, and therefore for the offer, if we know that, if we share that we can have so much people not suffer alone and not drown on their own in this big sea. And therefore, we actually produce more good than the opposition, the world that the proposition has created could ever have. Now, the third argument is that mental illness has a great impact on creativity. Of course, they have a great impact. But, however, Judge, you should see that the proposition has only seen negative impacts and had completely forgot the positive impact that benefit every single individual basically every single individual who sees this art, makes this art, and related to this art, this everything, even music, every single individual related to this music, this piece of art, is actually benefited. And therefore, Judge, our world is actually better than the propositions were. For all these reasons, I think, Judge, you should vote for an opposition ballot.
As side proposition, we strongly agree with the motion. As a third speaker of proposition, allow me to start my speech with a few rebuttals. The first speaker has emphasized that if you don't have a disease, you are not considered an artist. However, our first speaker has already mentioned that this is one of the most common stereotypes. Artists without mental illness are still artists. They can still create art that is famous around the world. This stereotype is a belief that came during the 19th century and has been proven wrong through multiple studies. The first speaker also said that you need to know an artist's background. However, to do this, there's no need to emphasize an artist's mental illness. This can be instead touched on briefing the explanation of the artist's inspiration. Instead, the emphasis should be on the artwork. Lastly, the second speaker said that you can still contribute to society even if you're an artist. We agree with this statement. However, we are simply trying to put the emphasis on the artwork, not trying to say that just because you have mental illness, you can't do anything. A few stakeholders and characteristics that we should consider throughout this debate are the artists. There are two types of artists, the ones who have mental illnesses and the ones who don't. Those artists who have mental health issues may not want to discuss their problems or do not want to be known for it. For example, like our second speaker has said, famous artist Van Gogh, stable and cut off his ear. However, many artists want you to see their talent activity. Yes.
If you are the artist, you want others to focus on your sickness or yourself. You don't want others just to focus on your sickness, right? You want them to see how well you did for your artwork.
Oh, well, that was what we have trying to say the whole time. We don't want the emphasis to be on the mental illness. We want the emphasis to be in the artwork so everyone can appreciate their artwork. So to continue off where I was, there are also many cases where buyers or collectors feel sorry for these artists, wanting to support them. Artists with mental issues might not want you to feel sorry for them. They want you to buy their paintings or drawings because they're creative, because of their talent, not because they have mental issues. Next, the artist's different expectations and standards. This means that a simple painting done by an artist with, for example, bipolar disorder could be seen as a masterpiece, but not the case for an artist without mental disorder. What does emphasizing an artist's mental health issues look like? By emphasizing their problems, we would be adding unnecessary attention towards their personal issues. We believe that by emphasizing an artist's mental health issues, we are overshadowing their achievements and artwork. The purpose of an artist is to create art, not to talk about their problems. By making the artist's problems a public discussion, it may make the artist uncomfortable. Does not emphasizing an mental health situation lead to a better discussion and appreciation of an artist's work? Not emphasizing artist's mental health situation can lead to discussions towards how the artist drew the pictures and the artistic process that they went through, things that should actually be discussed when looking at a piece of artwork. Also, some artists may want to share their struggles. However, in our world, we are not banning being able to share their problems. People are still able to discuss, and artists are still able to share. Instead, we believe that the primary emphasis should be on the artwork, not on the artist's problems. Why is focusing on the work by itself better? We should focus on the work on its own, where actually artists achieve on artistic terms. If we put the primary emphasis on their mental illness, it is disrespectful to the artist and takes away the point of discussion. Several years of hard work is put this work, and taking the spotlight off the artwork and putting it on the issues that is simply disrespectful. We should be celebrating an artist's achievements and accomplishments, not their facts. Therefore, from what we have told you today, this is why we believe that the motion should stand. Thank you for listening.
In this speech, I'm going to rebut your argument, and then I'm going to rebuild our argument. First, I'm going to rebut your argument. The first argument says that having nothing to do with mental illness. Then I'm going to give you a question. How does actually when Van Gogh cut off his ear and then have a very important and could be the best one of Van Gogh's like painting? But how can you say it was not actually nothing to do with mental illness? That the argument don't stand because actually it's have a very, very big idea with mental illness with the painting. Because first you need to have the effort, like Van Gogh cutting off his ear and then doing his painting. We don't want everybody to do that. It was just letting everybody know about the painting. How does Van Gogh do it? How does Van Gogh have mental illness and then do a very important and a beautiful painting? We don't want them to suffer from it. We don't told you and we don't tell everybody in the world to let you suffer and cut down your ear to draw something. No, we don't do that because everybody know it could suffer very big harm to this. And then if the opposition side argument stands, why right now we do not cut our ear or cut a place where and we have a very important and a very famous painting? No, that don't sense. So like this shows that their first and their second argument don't sense. Now rebutting the third argument is that mental illness has a great impact on creativity. No, we don't actually want them to actually have like mental issues, like suffer, and we don't let them to do it, and they can create whatever they want, like create a painting with a bow or something. We don't let them to suffer from illness. We don't want them to. We are just telling them the things that about how they made this and how they do it. We don't want them to suffer from this. Everyone don't want it. Now moving on to rebuilding our argument. Our argument is that our first argument is saying greater appreciation of the artwork. However, our argument still stands because lots of people want to know that how did they work it. Nobody just want to know this is a painting of Van Gogh and how did they paint it. No, everybody want to know it, not just you. So we need to tell them how did Van Gogh do this painting to be so famous, and how does he do in this painting. And I'm going to state again, we don't want them or our peoples to have mental issues. We just want us to know Van Gogh's doing having mental issues and then doing this famous painting. We don't want them to suffer from mental issue. Now moving on to rebuilding our second argument, saying that actually it helps the audience. However, our argument still stands because it helps the audience to think of the artists have unique and think of them of like actually thinking of how does Van Gogh do this painting? That was so special? We just want them to know it. But we don't want them to do mental issues, like as you said opposition said the proposition said that they think that if we do that, like they said lots of people are going to suffer. We don't say that. For all these reasons, Judge, you should strongly vote for our opposition.
Judge, in this speech, I will first present you with the two main clashes I see in this debate, and then also I will weigh me and our opponents' impacts. Now, firstly, I see two main clashes. The first main clash I see is which benefits the artist the most, and it's also the most important one. The second is also very major, however, not as important as which benefits artists, but still very major and vital in this debate. That is, which benefits the people looking and celebrating all these art, and that people, all the fans and people like that. So Now moving on to weighing our sides clashes. The first main clash is which benefits artists the most. Their argument is that mental health causes a lot of people to suffer. Mental illness has great impact on creativity, and also it has nothing to do with mental illness whether an artist does great on a project or art or music. It doesn't matter. So maybe I'll conclude the second one. Mental health causes a lot of people to suffer to the next category. However, the first and third arguments are definitely about which benefits artists. Now let's look at our arguments. Our argument is basically that this has a positive ripple effect on normalizing mental health issues, because mental health issues, like this artist has mental health, right? So I'm just saying about mental health issues, it is both the people looking who has mental health issues and the artist, because he or she also have mental health issues. And so another argument is that another argument we presented is that there will be greater appreciation of the artwork. We know that this benefits artists, but not the people looking, because, well, basically, let's say you say this artwork is great, I'll buy it. Does this benefit the like artists? Yes, of course, because they have more income, obviously. Now, they just stated basically one argument. That argument is basically that mental illness has great impact on creativity. Mental illness have nothing to do with it. Mental illness doesn't matter at all. However, this actually matters because mental illness is a part of how they created this work. And we, in our world, we benefit every single individual, and we benefit this artist, which is what this clash is about. And you basically say that's wrong to do what? That's wrong to do what? And do not offer a solution. And therefore, Judge, we win this clash. The second main clash is which benefits the people looking. Our arguments are basically what I stated as my second speaker argument, and also how I also explained how this helps audiences in the constructive speech. Now, your argument is that mental health causes a lot of people to suffer. However, because it helps a lot of people suffer, just celebrating it, telling it, makes this suffer less. So Judge, you have to see that in the world that Kant has created, we produce much more happiness and good, and in the world that Pro has created, it's more suffering. So for all of these reasons, I think, Judge, you should vote for an opposition ballot.
As the final speaker of side proposition, I will start my speech by rebutting side opposition. Firstly, opposition's first speaker has said that you must know an arts background. Yes, we hear you, but we believe that an artist's mental illness should only be touched upon during the explanation of the arts background, not be the entire primary emphasis of the celebration. The second speaker of side opposition has said that people who are suffering alone can relate to these artists and also be encouraged to come out of their shell. However, there are many different ways to encourage people taboo as express and let these people who have mental illnesses express their problems. We can instead educate people about mental illnesses. This is far more effective way than simply making an artist struggle with mental illness the primary emphasis of a celebration of artistic matters. The opposition's third speaker has claimed that an artist should have put in the effort to do it, and this effort should be known. He has given Van Gogh's example of cutting off his ear. However, this is yet an example of this stereotype should be disencouraged. It is completely untrue. And it lowers the view of an art. Speaker's whole elaboration has been revolving around the fact that we inform people. Yes, we also agree that people should be informed about artists' mental illness as they are viewing the artwork. However, we believe that they should not constantly discuss about the artist's mental illness and bring the discussion away from the art and the process itself. Now I will move on to the best case, worst case scenario. In our worst case scenario, an artist's mental illness is sometimes not known. However, unless an artist requests it, the primary emphasis is rightfully on artistic matters. In opposition's best case scenario, people constantly emphasize an artist's mental illness, and the art process is often ignored, with the discussion taken away from it. Clearly, our worst case scenario far outweighs opposition's best case scenario. Now I'll move on to the issues of this debate. Firstly, a lot of the third speak on arguments. They have said that we said that an artist's mental illness has nothing to do with the art. In fact, this is wrong. We have only said that an artist's mental illness has nothing to do with the true quality of the art itself. We also agree with them that an art's background should be touched upon during the celebration of their work. However, an artist's mental illness should not be the primary focus of when celebrating. In conclusion, for what we have told you today, this is why we strongly believe that side proposition should win this debate and the motion